Welcome to Adulting Candle Company, where grown-up vibes meet cozy self-care. Whether you're manifesting peace with a crystal-infused candle, rewinding with a nostalgic wax melt, or turning your bathroom into a spa with our signature body products, we've got you. We're not just candles, we're a vibe. All handmade, ethically sourced, and wrapped in love. And sometimes glitter. Craving peppermint wonderland? Obsessed with opulent florals? Need a candle that says, "I survived today"? Yeah, we have all that too. Join the Adulting Candle Company fam and light your life. One intention, one flame, one fabulous scent at a time. Shop now at www.adultingcandleco.com or find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Adulting Candle Co. I'm Henny B, and welcome to the World War I Stories podcast, where history comes alive through the voices of those who lived it. Some scenes in these stories may be too graphic for sensitive listeners, so listener discretion is advised. A quick note before the show. World War I Stories Tales Beyond the Trenches is now available on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle. You heard that right. I've handpicked 10 stories from the podcast, arranged them into a book, and released Volume 1 to the masses. So if you love these stories and would like to own them in ebook or paperback, simply search for World War I Stories Tales Beyond the Trenches on Amazon. And don't shy away from sharing the podcast or even the book with those who love historical fiction. And now, today's episode. Hello, girls. She was late for class. Jessica Barnes walked briskly down the bustling corridor of Princeton University, her mind preoccupied with the lecture she was about to miss. She loved being at Princeton, the vibrant campus life, the stimulating conversations, but the classes themselves often felt like a chore. The flyer captured her attention instantly, and she stopped dead in her tracks. Fluent in French? Join the U.S. Army Signal Corps as a telephone operator. Serve your country and support our troops overseas, it read. No longer concerned with being late, she retrieved a pencil and a notepad from her bag and jotted the information down. She would go after her classes ended that very day. The recruiter barely looked at her before asking, "So, you speak French?" "Basirkawi, sinon zurena pas, pustale." He glanced up at her, unamused. Her smile quickly faded. "Yes, sir." She was nervous now, a feeling she had not felt just 30 seconds before. "I already spoke to the dean at the school. They said I can continue my studies when I return, as long as I'm serving the country." "I see," he responded as he continued to look over her application. "We're more concerned with how you can help us, not what happens after the fact." She fidgeted nervously. "I see. Well, I can speak fluent French. I started learning it in grammar school." He glanced up from the paper. "So you demonstrated." He put her application down. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It's a difficult and stressful job you're applying for. If selected, you're going to be put through the ringer. More mentally than physically, but the ringer nonetheless. You will be trusted with highly classified information. You will hear and see things that you wish you had not heard or seen. You may even have to endure some experiences that are quite unnerving. Do you understand everything that I've just explained to you?" "I understand." "Good," he replied. "I also want you to understand that this position requires you to be in full military dress at all times. It comes with full military compensation as well as benefits both during and after your service." "I understand." He sat back in his chair and looked her over, making her even more nervous. What was he looking at, she thought to herself. Then, just as quickly, he leaned forward, opened a desk drawer, and produced a small manila envelope. "Here are your orders. There's a bus ticket in here for you as well. You leave in a week." It had all happened so fast. The interview, being selected, and being dismissed, all within a 10-minute span. She had not realized that she could fall asleep in a lorry that bounced as much as this one did, but she had. It took one jarring lurch to bring her out of the light slumber. Her shoulder knocked hard against the wooden slats and she winced, blinking into the smoky, dust-laced air. The canvas cover above her flapped with each gust of wind, and the tires churned steadily through the muck of the narrow road. She sat upright, slowly trying to shake the fog from her head. Her lower back throbbed with a dull ache. She reached behind to rub it, but her arms felt like they were moving through water. Across from her, Marion whistled low. Didn't think anyone could sleep through that ride. You've got talent, Jess. Jessica tried to smile, but only managed a small nod. Guess I was more tired than I thought. I couldn't sleep in a lorry if I tried, Marion said, shaking her head with a grin. Jessica turned and looked out the side of the lorry at the passing French countryside. It was nothing like the high desert of her home in northern Nevada. Back there, the land stretched dry and wide beneath an endless sky, all dust, sagebrush, and the long hum of wind. Here, everything was green, soft, damp. Even the air smelled different. She'd first noticed it during the train ride east from Sparks, watching the landscape shift from gold to gray to deep, lush greens. But France was another world entirely. Hedgerows and pastures stitched together like a quilt, the kind of countryside she'd only seen in books before Princeton. Jessica let out a quiet sigh as she gazed at the countryside. I can't believe I'm in France, she said. I've dreamt of coming here all my life. She turned to Marion, a tall brunette from Iowa whose long legs were awkwardly folded beneath her in the cramped lorry. But I never imagined it would be for something like this. Jessica had always been an exceptional student, especially in languages. Her focus on French earned her a scholarship to the University of Nevada in Reno, where she studied for 2 years before transferring to Princeton. It was there, just 3 months ago, that she'd seen the flyer that had been posted by someone on behalf of General John Pershing, with a new opportunity to support the war effort. Marion had a similar story, she knew. She had come from Iowa and then Cornell before being sent to Camp Franklin outside of Washington, D.C. for switchboard operator and military discipline training. The two young women had met at Camp Franklin and had become fast friends almost immediately. And now, here they were, riding in a bouncing lorry bound for the front lines of France. Their mission? To help run a switchboard operation and keep the lines of communication running smoothly amidst the chaos of war. The lorry lurched to a final stop in a clearing just outside a row of low-slung canvas tents and a battered stone building marked with a faded red cross. Mud splattered the wheels and caked the makeshift road. Jessica stepped onto the solid ground for the first time in hours and immediately performed the universal stretch and groan, the kind shared by anyone who spent too long in a rattling vehicle. Her back stiffened as she arched, and a dull throb settled into her lower spine. She rolled her shoulders, trying to shake it off. Probably just the ride. Marion climbed down behind her and let out a low whistle. Looks like home sweet home. Before Jessica could reply, the front door of the stone building creaked open. A tall woman in a crisp Signal Corps uniform stepped out, her expression composed but alert. A clipboard rested in the crook of one arm. Barnes? Russell? She asked, scanning the group. Jessica snapped to attention, her heart skipping. Yes, ma'am. I'm Grace Banker, the woman said, offering a short nod. Chief Operator, AEF, 1st Army. Jessica felt her spine straighten a little more. Even Marion took half a step forward, her usual grin fading into something closer to reverence. We've just come off a 12-hour shift, so forgive the rush, Grace continued. You'll get your bearings soon enough. Right now, I'll show you where you're quartered, and then where you'll be working. You're needed immediately. She turned on her heel and began walking. Marion and Jessica scrambled to follow. They passed a line of tired-looking clerks, a pair of doughboys carrying a stretcher, and a young French boy loading crates into a supply cart. The wind shifted, carrying the distant rumble of artillery and the sharp tang of engine oil. Grace led them around the back of the main building to a narrow wooden barrack tucked between two stone walls. Inside were a half-dozen bunks, 2 wood stoves, and a row of footlockers along the far wall. "This is yours," she said. "No assigned beds. You'll be rotating with the night team." Jessica stepped inside and let her bag drop beside an empty bunk. Her right leg gave a small wobble as she turned, enough to make her grab the footlocker for balance. She blinked, frowned, and steadied herself before anyone noticed. Grace didn't pause. "Leave your gear, bring your coats. The board's hot and we're short on hands." Jessica adjusted her satchel, the ache in her arm steeper than it should have been. Marian gave her a questioning glance, but Jessica just nodded and followed. Grace led them through a side entrance into the main stone building. The air inside was warmer, thick with sweat, dust, and something metallic. The low hum of voices and the soft click of switches filled the narrow hallway. They entered a cramped room lined wall to wall with switchboards, each station glowing with tiny lights and crawling with cords like a mechanical spider's web. 4 women sat hunched at their posts, eyes sharp despite the long shift. Behind them, field telephones crackled and rang in uneven rhythm. Maps were tacked to the wall with strings stretched between pins. A lieutenant leaned over a corner desk, mumbling into a headset. Jessica barely had time to take it in before 2 operators at the end of the room stood and stretched with groggy relief. "You're up," one of them said, brushing past Jessica with a tired smile. "May God bless your hearing." Marian chuckled nervously and took the empty seat nearest the window. Jessica moved to the other and sat slowly, her limbs oddly unresponsive. Not from fear, not quite, just tired. Bone tired. In front of her, a board full of tiny lights blinked, steady and urgent. She reached for the headset, adjusted it with practiced fingers, and plugged in her first line. A light blinked to life. She connected the cord, her hand trembling ever so slightly, and spoke. "Hello?" The board was lit up like a Christmas tree. Jessica worked with practiced precision, her hands moving faster than thought, connecting and switching, her voice calm even as the room buzzed with urgency. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows, and in the distance, the guns hadn't stopped for hours. 6 months. That's how long she'd been in France now. Long enough for her uniform to feel like a second skin, for the hum of the switchboard to haunt her sleep. The novelty was long gone. What remained was duty. A light flared at the top left corner of her board. Line 17. She plugged in. "Operatrice, je vous écoute." Static, then a man's voice, hoarse, fast, and panicked. "Un poste avancé. Nous sommes souffrants. Artillerie à l'ordre. Nous avons besoin de renfort immédiat tout le monde. Je vous en supplie." Jessica reached for her log sheet, her pencil hovering. "Je comprends, Bois Saint-Pierre, c'est ça? Veuillez confirmer la position exacte." The voice crackled back. "Oui, au sud du chemin forestier. Il avance. Nous n'attendrons personne." The floor vibrated, a low rumble, deep and close. The walls of the stone building groaned faintly. Overhead, the lights flickered. Jessica's fingers tightened on the cord. "Caporal Ballard, vous m'entendez? Répétez, s'il vous plaît." A sharp crack of static. Then silence. Jessica stared at the board as the light on line 17 faded to black. "Marian," she said, her voice suddenly quiet. Marian turned in her seat beside her, still mid-connection. "What is it?" "That call. It was close. He said Bois Saint-Pierre. That's just past the ridge, isn't it?" Marian didn't answer right away. She glanced at the map pinned to the wall, the red thread marking the edge of Allied control. Jessica stared down at the cord still plugged into the dark socket. Her fingers, which hadn't trembled in months, began to shake again, just a little. She sat on the cot surrounded by wounded and sick infantrymen. None fatal, but still a dreary sight, at least to Jessica. "I think it's something I ate," she said, trying to sound casual. "Or maybe just nerves. I've been feeling off." The doctor, a lean man with gray stubble and tired posture, barely glanced up from his clipboard. "Fever?" "A little headache too, but mostly nausea." He made a quiet note. "You eating regular meals?" Jessica gave a faint smile. "If Marion remembers to remind me." The doctor's expression didn't change. He approached, set the clipboard on a stool, and tilted his head. "Smile for me." Jessica blinked. "What?" "Just smile." She did, or tried to. The doctor's brow furrowed. Again, Jessica forced the expression once more. She felt one side of her mouth lift slower than the other. He stepped in a bit closer, eyes narrowing. "All right, stand up for me." Jessica rose, but her left knee gave slightly, and she caught herself on a cot post. She looked down at her leg, puzzled. "That's weird. I must have twisted something earlier." "Did you?" the doctor asked, voice calm but focused. She opened her mouth to reply, but he was already kneeling. He tapped along her shin and calf, then gently squeezed her knee and ankle. "Any pain here?" "No, not really. Just tired, I guess." He stood slowly, studying her the way someone might study a flickering lantern, unsure when it would go dark. "I'm going to have you lie back, Miss Barnes. I need to run a full check. Reflexes, neural response, just to be safe." "Safe from what?" she asked, unease rising in her chest. "Nothing I can confirm yet. Just rest for now." He picked up the clipboard again, wrote something quickly, and stepped out through the tense flap. Jessica lay back, her pulse quickening. Her left leg twitched involuntarily. She stared up at the canvas ceiling where a single moth flitted towards the light. She had been sent home immediately. Polio, they said. The symptoms were all there. Extreme fatigue, a drooping facial expression, weakening muscles. And she was scared. Those symptoms only worsened during the arduous trip back home. The train ride was especially grueling. The constant vibration played hell with her weakening muscles. By the time the train pulled into the Sparks, Nevada depot, she could barely walk without assistance. The musty but highly lit office she found herself in today had been recently opened. It was called the War Risk Insurance Bureau. Its purpose was to provide disability compensation, medical care, and insurance to current and ex-military personnel. She sat across from a sergeant who had been reviewing her file in silence. Beside her, her mother sat rigid, hands folded tightly in her lap. Jessica glanced over just in time to see her mother's face twitch, then redden as the man began to speak. "I understand what's in the file," the sergeant said, his voice flat and practiced. "But, Miss Barnes, according to Army classification, you were never formally enlisted. The Signal Corps Operator Division is civilian." Jessica opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He continued, "That means you're not eligible for military medical benefits under the War Risk Insurance Act. I know you wore the uniform, but administratively, it's a non-combatant role, non-military." Her mother leaned forward. "She nearly died overseas. She came back sick, weak. You're telling me none of that matters?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm just quoting the policy." Jessica stared at the papers laid out before her. Her name, her orders, the blurred carbon copy of her discharge. None of it seemed to matter. She had served under fire, worn the same boots, heard men die over the wire. But now, sitting in this small federal office in Carson City, it was as if she had never been there at all. Jessica finally found the courage to speak, though her voice was thin, worn down by the disease that still lived in her body. "I was told," she said slowly, "by my recruiter, that I would receive all the compensation and benefits worthy of United States military personnel. The sergeant didn't look up from the file. Then you were lied to. I'm sorry, but I have other cases to see. With a flick of his hand towards the door, the appointment was over. What do you wish for the letter to say? Her mother asked her. Jessica looked out the window for a long moment before answering. Her hands, once nimble and precise on the switchboard, now rested limp in her lap, curled like leaves drying in the sun. She hated asking for help with the simplest things, hated needing help to write a letter. I wanted to say... She paused, her voice fragile, each word costing her effort. That I served, that I wore the uniform, that I was promised care if anything happened to me. Her mother nodded slowly, waiting. That I didn't catch this disease at home, Jessica continued. I caught it in service to my country. I gave them everything I had. I gave them my body, and now they're telling me I don't count? Tears stung her eyes, but she forced them back. Tell them that, Mama. Tell him I counted. You tell me what to write, and I will write it, my love. Over the next half hour, they crafted a letter to Nevada Senator Key Pittman. Dear Senator Pittman, my name is Helen Barnes, and I am writing to you as a mother and a citizen of this great state. My daughter, Jessica Barnes, served in France during the war. She was one of the young ladies working for the Signal Corps, operating telephone lines near the front. She is home now, sick with polio, which we were told she got while training or possibly on the troop ship to France. Jessica had been told by her recruiter that she would be given full military pay and benefits like any other soldier. But now she's home and sick, and the War Risk Insurance Office told us she doesn't qualify for help because they say she wasn't really in the Army. That don't make any sense to me. She wore the uniform. She was there in France. She served just like the boys did, only she had a telephone instead of a rifle. We're not asking for special treatment. We're just asking that she be given what she was promised when she signed up. She's only 24 and already can't walk without help. We don't have the money for doctors or for care, and I'm afraid for what comes next. Please, Senator, I ask you kindly to look into this. These girls gave so much, and it isn't right to send them home broken and forget about them. I know you are busy with important matters, but this is important too, for Jessica and for others like her. Thank you for taking your time, and God bless you. Sincerely, Mrs. Helen Barnes, Sparks, Nevada. Jessica looked on as her mother rose, folded the letter, and slipped it into an envelope. I'll be right back, my dear. I'm going to the post office to mail this right away. Will you be all right for 30 minutes? Jessica nodded weakly, the motion small but sure. From her chair by the window, she watched her mother walk out the door and down the front path, headed to mail a letter that Jessica would never know the result of. Historical note. Jessica and Miriam are fictional characters, but this story is rooted in truth. During World War I, more than 200 women, known as the Hello Girls, were recruited by the U.S. Army Signal Corps to serve as bilingual telephone operators in France. Fluent in both English and French, these women played a vital role in maintaining communications on the front lines. They wore U.S. Army uniforms, swore Army oaths, followed Army orders, and worked under dangerous and grueling conditions, sometimes just miles from the fighting. Despite their military service, the U.S. government did not recognize them as veterans when they returned home. They were denied benefits, medical care, and military honors. For decades, the contributions of the Hello Girls were largely unacknowledged. It wasn't until 1977, when nearly 60 years after the war ended, that Congress passed legislation finally granting them veteran status. Only a handful of the original Hello Girls were still alive to receive this recognition. This story is dedicated to them. You've been listening to World War I Stories, Tales Beyond the Trenches. If this episode stayed with you, if it stirred something quiet or left you in stillness, share it, follow the show, leave a rating, help keep these stories alive. Our first collection now lives on Kindle. Search World War I Stories, Tales Beyond the Trenches, Volume 1 in your Kindle app, and carry these echoes with you. For glimpses behind the curtain and stories between the stories, join me on Instagram at WWIPod_HennyB. And if you'd like to see your name in the credits, become a producer. Visit our Patreon at patreon.com/World War I Stories and help power the next tale into existence. Thank you for walking back in time with me.